Well, hello. Welcome back again. Here in my little lair, I guess, my little studio. We're doing a little bit of a medieval thing again today. You can't really see it as much except for this thing. Perhaps I'll even take this hood off. I don't know. I was hoping to have a nice little medieval tea and shisha session again. The tea is there, the shisha is like it was last time. I just don't know how it works quite well. I know how it works theoretically. It's used to work quite well. But I don't know if it's just the coal is old, that's sometimes the thing. But in either case, today I wanted to talk a little bit like the last time about it's Easter week here. Talk about religion, God, tarot, medieval times. It all comes together quite well, right? So let's take a look here to start out of this beautiful tarot deck. It's called the Minchiadi Tarot. And the reason I wanted to look at this a little bit is because we'll notice that this tarot deck, it does have kind of this writing on some of the cards, right? That kind of marks the name of the type of the card and everything, like the deck type, I want to say. Here you'll see it more on the aces, which is kind of my point of this game today. You'll notice that this ace has a little writing on there. Oops. How do you see that? Per case. Oh, I had it upside down, didn't I? Well, anyway, I love the aces in this deck. And that's a really nice one, isn't it? But this deck also, very interesting how the lining of the tarot, the numbers are completely different of what we're used to, right? I mean, if you think about that one right there, number 3 is the Pope, right? So number 2 is the Empress, which usually is the High Priestess, right? And then we have 3, 4, 5. 5 is already the Lovers. And then we have the Pope and the Emperor as 3 and 4. So it's quite a different look. Justice is at number 8. Fortune is number 9. So you'll see all of them are kind of off by just a little bit. But the way they look is very nice, kind of old style, classic. Wow, it looks like it's really dark in here, isn't it? I turned all the lights on, but it's so sunny outside that we don't really have light in here quite as well. So anyway, the thing about this deck is that as far as what it says on the box, this Minchiadi deck is supposed to be one of the first 16th century Florence, Italy, right? So very early. I wanted to say that obviously Rider Waite Smith and Crowley Thoth, those two, they're 1800s, 1900s, maybe somewhere in there. So quite a bit later, right? So obviously if Rider Waite Smith created that sequence for the major arcana, then that's not necessarily going to be found in the earlier times. Although we do have like the Marseille is also 1700s, 1800s maybe, and that is a lot closer to the to what Rider Waite Smith then adopted for his. However, what's fascinating to me is when I was researching on these tarot cards, like a year ago or so, I found out, which probably a lot of people already know, tarot used to not be the deck for divination. It was just the game's called tarot. Just like in Germany, Germany, we have a deck called a Skat deck, which I think starts at 7 and goes up 7, 8, 9, 10, and then Jack, Queen, King, right? So odd, isn't it? The 1 through 5 or 1 through 6 are just left out. And as I saw with that deck on one of my other videos for the Vina Secession tarot deck, that is actually, I believe that game, I was just searching it up today, because the red suits have ace through 4, and then just like in tarot, they have 4 in the main court, right? But the black suits have 10, 9, 8, 7, and then they have the 4 tarot court cards. So that is a game, or at least I found a game that was played in the Austrian area, which is called Königsrufer or something, like the Call of the King, or Call the King, the King Caller, I guess, because it's a game similar, from what I'm gasping, not too similar, because or else I might understand it, but sort of similar to hearts or spades, where it's about getting a trump, and then the trump takes that, and if you take more than half of the trumps, which there's 70, I guess, or 70 points, so if you take more than half of the points, 36 points, that's how you win. If you call beforehand, if you're playing by yourself, or calling one of your players to be with you on a team to get 36 points from these trumps. So I found that super interesting. I don't remember exactly the year on that tarot deck, but once again, it's different card decks that are just for different games, right? So tarot wasn't even something that you would use for that specifically. But anyway, the point was that talking about religion, talking about back in those olden days, a lot of people way closer to the Vatican or to their priest or pope or whatever, as far as what they believe, what they're allowed to do. And back in those days, or even to Jesus's times, if we want to go there, since we're talking about Easter this week, I always wonder why something like this, which, like I said, I was going to be doing this again to make my point, but it's barely working. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't do it that much, right? It's been a while, so then everything gets kind of old. But anyway, the point is, this has existed in Egypt or in the Middle East or whatever, for thousands of years. Same with tea, right? I think tea is like 6,000 years old, that people heat water and then have whatever they put in there, to give the water a little flavor. So why would these things be forbidden, right? Because let's face it, in my sect or religion, or not mine, but the one that I was baptized into, that's a no-no. No coffee, no tea, no sex before marriage, no smoking for sure. And so I always wonder, well, if those things are so bad, because let's face it, I've watched some videos and read on people that are kind of like in these debates, right? A little church on church debate, right? Where it's not like I'm telling you should go to church, and they're saying I'm totally atheist, I don't believe anything or whatever. No, it's like, I go to this church, I go to this church. Okay, well, is it Christian and Muslim? No, it's Christian and Christian, right? They're both like, well, Jesus is the one. Yes, very true. Yes, I believe that too. Okay, well, you should be coming to my church though, and it's like, well, why is that? Because a lot of churches pick that their church is the right church, right? And you need to be in their building. It's super, super important, right? And so why is that? Or why would I care? Or why don't I care? Why am I different, right? Because, hey, I think it's interesting. My other video you might see, I watch General Conference, and it is nice to watch, just like it is nice to watch those other debate videos, or people just professing their faith, which I love listening to and I love hearing about why they picked their particular faith, right? But I don't know. Some things, like I said before, taro can be one of those things, not just tea, which I think is delicious. I have no reason to say I cannot drink tea, otherwise Jesus would be angry at me, I guess. No, I don't see that way. And smoking, yeah, we can totally agree. Smoking and alcohol is not necessarily good for you, but I don't think that Jesus would have neglected to mention that while drinking wine with his 12 apostles, right? That, hey, I can do this, but if you guys do this, I'm not letting you in. That's like, it seems like something weird that he would miss if he's perfect and knows everything and wants us all to return to him because he loves us. Because I do believe that part, he loves each one of us and he doesn't care what we've done. He wants us to love him back and love each other, right? But there's certain questions, right? There's like, why? Why would he have forgotten to mention that? Anyway, so seeing now the two kind of graphs, right? One side tarot, the other side religion. Now we're going to twine those two together in the point of this video, if there is a point, or if it's just a fun way to chit chat and hopefully have people agree, disagree in the comments, have a little, tell me what. I love hearing, what do people think? Because I like tea. This is good. Jasmine tea today with lemongrass. Very nice. Sadly on shisha, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about card decks. Here we have a really nice, can we see this on there? Patience deck. Now, Patience is as far as I know, this is my grandmother's deck. Well, it was hers. Now it's mine. It's kind of like solitaire. And this deck, you'll see on here, it has two decks, as a lot of in Germany we have that a lot, that it's always two. I think I have that in America too, but in Germany it's really a lot that you have a thing with one deck here, one deck here. They have two different backs, so you can quickly separate them again. One is red, one is blue, as often is the case. But this says Teisinger Frankfurt, so it's a really nice German. But I just kind of wanted to share this because it's really cute. It's kind of like that bridge size, right? It's got a beautiful little birdie on this one. I turned on the lights here. I don't know why it's so dark in here, but whatever. And then you can see the cards are just really nice. They just have the pips, not even a number in the corner. And if you look at these guys, look how beautiful those guys are created, colored and drawn. There's another king. I just love that. Kings have crowns, whereas the queen is obviously a woman, and then the jack just has a different kind of hat. These are a little bit, to me, looking like French, right? French Revolution. I don't really know exactly what they would be, but you can see they kind of, this guy is holding his hat there. And then this beautiful, I just love this. Anyway, this is a really cute, nice keepsake type thing from my grandmother, which would be sad to use and then have it be broken or lose a card or have it damaged in any way. It's really just very fancy, though. I just love how fancy this is. It doesn't even, like I said, no numbers in the corners. It's just the pips. Anyway, that was just a little fun thing to show, a little artsy historical thing, just because that's a big thing for me. Art and history is just fascinating to me. I love medieval, right? That's why I like wearing these. This is kind of warm, actually. There we go. We'll just do that. Okay. Anyway, getting back to history and cards, because fun fact, in my religion also, the Mormons or the LDS, well, let's first look at the cards. Okay, so here's just a fun very weird. I don't know why it's so zigzag, you know, the weird zigzag cards, but you'll look at these and you'll notice that spades is quite ornate compared to these other three, isn't it? Which I'll be getting to the point of that. But yeah, in our society, I've heard many people kind of question, confusion, not only about, you know, tea and which tea can we drink that's going to be okay, but also with cards, right? Once again here, look at those three little pips, and then look at that beautiful pip. It's always the ace of spades. So we would you know, have my friends over after school and then consider questioning, can we play cards, right? I mean, I think Uno cards are okay for most people, not for everyone, depending on how strict your parents are. But specifically these playing cards, that once again, the aces are always like that, and the ace of spades usually huge. In this case, there's a little shark in there, a little ornate around the sides. Very beautiful, very interesting. Yeah, so, you know, sometimes some school of thought is like, hey, you cannot play gambling games like poker, but we could play, you know, a version of Uno with these cards, or you know other card games that particularly may be possible to be played with a regular playing card game, right? So you can play that, but you cannot play gambling games, casino games, or some school of thought is, well, we can totally play 21 but not blackjack, right? Because if you play 21, then you're simply just playing a fun game. You're not gambling, right? But as soon as you have little plastic discs there, then all of a sudden the game might make you go crazy, right? And that aspect, once again, okay, if you have a gambling addiction or you have a problem with getting addicted to anything, right? And where you drink one cup of tea and now you have to drink tea constantly, or you drink one Coke a day and then it becomes 5 Cokes a day and you just cannot say no more sugar or whatever. That's, of course, you know, your thing, whether drinking a lot of tea or Coke is going to be way more expensive than being addicted to cigarettes or being addicted to gambling. Gambling, of course, you can lose a lot in just one hand. Once again, look how beautiful those are. Ornate, right? Quite interesting. I love the ornateness of these cards. However, of course, it causes a lot of confusion, right? If you're always wondering, can we play this game? Can we not play this game? You know, and it's like, well, you have to decide for yourself, I guess, right? Once again here, I like these. These are the ones you get in Vegas that have been used on the table. They always have a very large, readable font and large pips, you know, which is very nice. And they're usually the ones that also still have this classic, very ornate ace, which I don't see as much anymore nowadays in playing cards, even though I do, like, when I learned about this, I was like, oh yeah, I totally have seen a lot of, like, even more ornate than that, where really just there's like a whole scene inside of that ace, right? Like a person and a umbrella or something and a doggy, whatever, some kind of stuff like that, right? Very cool. Yeah, so so you think, what is this? You know, can we play card games or not? And how is Uno or Skippo different than these cards, right? The face cards that we all know are going to lead us surely to Satan if we play just one game, so to speak, which, once again, a little over the top, right? Just like with the tea, it's like, I think I can handle drinking tea. I don't have to drink nothing else, but if you did, tea is actually pretty healthy. Anyway, if you've ever heard the old, this card, the old having an ace up your sleeve, so that is actually fascinating to me. The way that came along is that back in the olden days, much probably around the time when these Minchiati cards and other cards like it, right? Because there's, how there's a similarity between Minchiati and the playing cards with the four suits, right? Just tarot cards having extra trumps, a lot of extra trumps for a trump game. It was still just a card game, okay? It was not that bad. But, one of the fascinating things is that these cards, the card game that I believe came over from China, right from the East, is when people started seeing, oh, these pretty cards, and what can we lay them out and stuff like that. Got people playing games, got people talking to each other and having a good time. And I guess so much so that the church was not getting as much attention or as much visitors or as much money in their little thing that they pass around. So of course that's why they said that's bad, right? So you think, oh, so they completely banned playing cards, right? And it's not quite like that. You would think that'd be simple enough, right? It's bad, so obviously the speaker for God would tell you it's really bad, you can't do that. But in fact, what they did say was there's just high tax on those decks, right? A really high tax as far as if you pay that to, I think, I don't remember exactly, but I think you have to pay the tax to the church. You're buying the playing card from the church, and or the church intertwined with government, however that works. Yeah, so I guess if you pay the church for this evil game, then it's okay, right? As long as they're making money off of it, it's not as bad. Anything that profits them isn't evil. Isn't that a weird problem in there? But anyway, so that's the interesting thing. So since people would forge playing cards or make their own playing cards, the church decided that you had to have that ace of spades as far as a full deck, right? That ace of spades had to be there because that one would have their tax stamp or a particularly, so it's hard to forge it, hard to copy it, a particularly intricate pattern in there. So that way, if you were playing cards, they could come by and look and see, is this a legit card game? Did you pay a lot of money for this? Because if you did, then I guess we'll let it slide. Which is where that comes from, having an ace up your sleeve, right? As long as you got that ace of spades, like you wouldn't carry a whole card deck. You would literally carry an ace of spades. So if you're playing cards and then they want to check if that's the only card you don't have, then you pull it out and then the deck is legit. So I find that super fascinating because that's kind of part of why cards would be wrong, you know what I mean? And then, of course, in some connection, tarot decks, right? Tarot cards, because they're also a card game, even though it's just a different trump game. But somehow that's all connected. And there, my point being, once again, excuse me. The point once again being, because I used to live in the city of Eisenach, where there's a castle that Martin Luther lived in for a while he was hiding from his church friends that wanted to kill him. And once again, that being the idea, right? What Luther said, that I don't think you should be telling people that if they pay you money, you are free of your sins. That's not exactly how it works. You can repent without paying off somebody to let you slide under the radar. That's just what corrupt cops would do. that's not how Jesus deals, right? So any pastor that has that kind of mentality, to me, feels a little off, right? It just seems like, this is not exactly the place I want to go when I die, right? So that's kind of where I'm like, I'm not a Lutheran, I'm not saying that this church is better than this church or my LDS religion that I am baptized in, but don't really go to that church every Sunday. But, I was baptized in the name of Jesus Christ, and therefore I'm baptized into his church, regardless of if I go to this building or that building or that building, right? Because Jesus himself, just like he didn't say that drinking tea will send you to hell or playing cards will send you to hell, he also didn't say you have to be in this one place every Sunday or every Shabbat, right? For those times, right? Shabbat, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. I mean, sure, he like recognized this is our traditions as him being a Jew and doing Jewish traditions, but he didn't seem to emphasize very heavily that we needed to do them as much as kind of showing that, oh, look, he says I can't do this on Sunday. I'm going to go in the middle of the town square, make sure there's some Pharisees around, and then I'm going to start doing that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, kind of wasn't exactly the way that a lot of pastors or bishops or priests or whichever religion you're in, whatever they want to call themselves, whatever dress they wear, what they say nowadays, right? It just seems to me that way. So once again, as much as I recognize Luther trying to change something in what he saw was going wrong, just like Jesus tried to change something in what he saw was going wrong, just like also Joseph Smith did it also in that same vein as Luther and the ultimate person, Jesus, right? But that still doesn't mean that I think that Joseph Smith's religion is the perfect one, because it's just, he maybe once again saw that he wanted to fix something in the way that other people were, but it still to me is like, if I'm looking towards the man for the religion, for the spiritual awakening, it's Jesus Christ, right? It's just that where I lived with Luther was very, also where I was living in St. Louis. I went up to Nauvoo. Like I said, that was so gorgeous there, seeing that Carthage jail, seeing Nauvoo, the little town there. That also, of course, makes you feel for him too. You're like, yeah, he seems like he was very convicted. Like he was to his convictions, right? He was like, I'm in this prison or in this basement cellar of this dude in, the Wild West prison type of system. He's like, I'm here. I'm still gonna not go back on what I said. What I said is what I said, right? I just think it's odd when everyone in that church says, yes, it's always good to ask God, but only if you're a 14-year-old boy and you were Joseph Smith and you did that. If it was Joseph Smith that did that, perfect. But if you want to be in his church, then just like Catholic and the other ones, you cannot understand things. You have to listen to what this person says, whether it is, like I said, this guy with the little white square here, this guy that calls himself whatever. It's still like, yeah, but Jesus said, keep this to Caesar, and you guys, you're kind of doing something wrong here, and you know what I mean? Like, he literally threw the tables around the temple, saying, "What are you guys doing here?" Right? I mean, and then people still are just like, "Yeah, no, the thing is, Jesus was perfect, but." And you're like, no, there's no but. And they're like, yeah, but you need us to tell you what this book says. And that's another nice thing. Let's do one more little story here. I know, talk. But so this tattoo here, I actually got that in Mainz, Germany. Because not only did Martin Luther translate when he was living in that Wartburg castle up at Eisenach on the hill there, hiding for 11 months from his church buddies. Sorry, I had a sneeze in my nose. Not only did he have to hide from his church buddies for 11 months, grow a big old beard, but there he translated the New Testament from, I think, Greek to German. So then people could read it, right? I mean, depending on what country you are, what language you need it in, but in Germany, in German, which is very nice when you don't have to go to some guy that has this big book and says it's Latin. Let me just tell you what it says. Oh, it says you should give me lots of money. What a coincidence, you know? But people could start, like I said, like Luther said, people should be able to read it themselves. I will translate it. And then Gutenberg, whatever his first name is, I don't know. Probably also Johann, right? Everyone's name is Johann Gutenberg. Anyway, so Gutenberg made the printing press, right? And they made those beautiful Gutenberg Bibles where like they have that one big letter in the corner and then like the writing is like this, you know. The letter usually very ornate, beautiful pictures on there, very much in that gorgeous style that I really like. That's kind of medieval. It's like the Scapini deck that I have. Anyway, yeah. So suddenly you could go print, and print off a whole Bible. People could afford it. Not everyone, of course, but a lot more people could afford a Bible when it wasn't every word handwritten and copied over. You know, that's when it started changing from one Bible per village in the church, and you go there and you ask him to read it to you, to, hey, if you can afford it, you can copy this Bible page off, and then people could have them at home. People could read them now because it was in their language, and they could read what it says, you know, and all that to then have people still say, yes, but trust me, you're too stupid for that. You're smart enough to pay me money, so pay me some money and I'll tell you what to think. It's just not right. It's just, like I said, to me, it does not matter. I'm not going to say this church is right, this church is right, this church is, you know, like I love Luther. Like I said, I don't say Luther is the Lutheran church is the smartest one. It's not my thing. You know, I'm baptized in the LDS church. I think that Joseph Smith and some of the other people, very interesting people, hardships they had and the things they did as far as going from here to there through Missouri, and, you know, then once he got murdered, boom, and the Brigham Young took the people back out into to right around here around the corner, Salt Lake. Sure, that's an amazing story, but I still don't say that this is the perfect, because like I said, perfect would not be so confused on, wait, but my friend said that we can play games with this deck, but just not with this one. Or you know what I mean? Or like, well, we can play with this deck as long as it's not a game that invokes, you know, and it's like, it's not the cards, you know what I mean? Just like this is not the devil, you know what I mean? This is just a card deck. You could play that complicated trump card game with it, or you can read cards with it. But when I read cards with it, I'm not invoking the same satanic beings that someone else might be, because they want to wear all black and they want to be all like, ooh, I'm so edgy and mysterious. I'm just like, whatever, I'm not. I'm just finding stuff out, okay? And do people do that don't do tarot cards? Do they read in the Bible and then say, guess what? It says right here, verse so and so. I was able to remember what line this is on, so I have found this. And it's like, okay, well, you can be inspired by the book, just like I'm inspired by the Bible, but why can't we be inspired by these pictures? Especially because, as we saw, these pictures are the Pope, Adam and Eve, the devil. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all this beautiful religious picturing, depicting all these stages. And then it's like, yeah, but we want to say it's evil because you paid that guy, not us, for it. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, that's a lot of thoughts. I got a lot of jumping around back and forth there. I mean, yeah, I'm not into Ouija boards. You know, that's a whole nother story. Anyway, yeah, I just like to put it out there. You know, I just like to share what I think from all these different people, what I see. I think it's important to believe, right? And if you're believing in Satan, you might as well believe in his father, his counterpart, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah, what do you people think? Tell me about it. Let's have a discussion. Let's hear some comments so I can answer some comments. I would love to. Have a great day. Have a wonderful Easter week. I'll probably do another little card reading video. Oh, excuse me. Oh, in the next couple of days. I know I'm awful. I burp and stuff. I don't cut. I don't edit. I just do this on my phone. One take and then done. What do I care if it's not perfect, right? I know people are like, I have to cut out the breathing. I breathe. Live with it. Deal with it, right? People breathe. Anyway, I'm real. Have a nice day. Bye bye.